Hi, my name's Ben with Heirloom Roses. I'm going to walk through the simple steps of installing our 20-foot stainless steel cable trellis. This stainless steel cable trellis was something we specifically designed for climbing roses and other plants to be easy to install so that you can train those plants onto the side of a fence, onto the side of your home, or onto a brick wall. So let's get started. The stainless steel cable trellis includes a 20-foot piece of cable with eyes on each end, a turnbuckle that's stainless steel and allows you to adjust the tension on the cable as either the weather changes or you need to accommodate spacing. And then 6 custom stainless steel eyes that are designed to screw into whatever surface you need them, and they're easy to install the cable. This is all a system that's meant to go together so that it makes it really easy for you to install and hopefully not an intimidating project. Let's get started. So let's talk about spacing. When you're getting ready to install this, you need to have a good idea of where you want it to go and the spacing involved for the layout. We've included a handy layout guide that's included in the link below, and that will give you several different configurations and the distance for the spacing of the eyes. We recommend you look at that, and if one of those works for you, it will make it much easier for doing the layout. And then if you want to do a custom layout, just remember that the cable is 20 feet long and the turnbuckle that's attached is 6 inches but can expand up to 8 inches. So you want to accommodate your layout for either 20 feet 6 inches or 20 feet 8 inches. And we'll talk through that as we go. So let's talk through the tools you'll need for this project. You'll need a hammer. That's going to be used to drive in the anchors, a tape measure for your layout, and I would recommend a tape measure that's longer than 20 feet. Although you don't have to have a 20-foot tape measure, it will make it easier. You'll need a wrench for tightening in the eyes into the wall and for your turnbuckle. And then you're going to need a drill with an 1/8-inch drill bit. So for the purposes of this video, I'm standing in front of a sample fence. And this is pretty typical of a cedar plank fence that you would use in your backyard. And I'll do the layout in such a way where we know where to drill the holes. One thing I think it's important when you're doing layout on finished surfaces, and it's something I like to do, is to put in some painter's tape. And so I've pre-laid this out with a painter's tape and where we're going to drill the holes. That way when I make marks, I'm not marking on the fence. If I make a mistake, I don't have a mark left over that it's hard to get rid of. And then I can drill straight through the tape. I'll have the hole and I'll take this off and all I'll have left over is the hole. So I didn't mention that in the tools, but some painter's tape or just masking tape is really nice to use on this type of a layout. So this is this fence is approximately 6 feet tall. It's approximately 10 feet wide, so you get a frame of reference or how large this will be. Now, when you're installing a cable, it's really tempting to maybe put one down low, but actually with a climbing rose, it's going to put off canes that are pretty long, and you're not going to actually need to start tying those canes up until you're in the 3-foot range. So don't use up your cable down low where things aren't going to attach to it. Pick a design and a layout that will start from 3 feet and go on up. That will make it much more better use of the cable, and the aesthetic look of the plant will look good as you tie it on. So as you can see for this layout, I've crisscrossed the cables going up each side and then across the top. So it kind of looks like a stool. And those cables going up each side are at a 45-degree angle crossing inside. That will allow me to have the canes come up and tie them on at a 45-degree angle and really fan the rose out and then curve those canes back along the top. And as you know from our climbing roses video, it's really important to get climbing roses to get their canes at about a 45 or horizontal so that they get blooms all over the plant. So if you haven't watched that video, it's important to watch that maybe before you do this install video so you have a good understanding of why it is we're fanning out climbing roses. Let's get started on making our marks. So I'm going to start here at my first point, and that is 13.5 inches from the top. And then when I'm going to come over 5 feet. So I forgot to mention, it might be good to have a second set of hands. For this video, I'm just going to do it myself, but it's always nice to have someone hold the other end of the tape. It'll just make things go easier. So as we're measuring over, I'm going to measure over 5 feet, and I'm going to make a mark right here at 5 feet. And then I'm going to come down the same height from the top as that other one. That way the top is horizontal, so it's 13.5 inches for here. Okay. and then we're going to drill our holes. Now the other thing is I'm going to come and make the marks on the bottom. So from the side, this is 19.5 inches. And these measurements really won't pertain to your project. They're just pertaining to this project specifically. And then, okay, now I have my 4 points marked. Now I know that everyone does measurements differently. I'm a person that if I can get to 1/8 of an inch, I'm pretty good. Some of you are going to want to measure this out to a 32nd or even more. Or some of you are like, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch, I'm terrible at measuring. That's okay. This whole cable system is meant to take into account the way some slight variance in tolerances. And so if you're a person and you saw me measuring this and you're like, that was not really 13.5 inches, I get it. It probably was a little bit off, but for the point of this is we want to get good uniformity on our holes and so that it looks nice. And if you're someone who wants to measure this very precisely, that's great. But if you're someone who wants to measure this a little less precisely, that's okay too. It's all going to be taken up at the end with the turnbuckle. Let's get it started on installing our eye screws. So with an 1/8 inch drill bit, I'm going to drill a hole, a pilot hole, right here where I made my mark through the tape. And you really don't have to, that tape's coming off. If the tape comes off completely, that's okay. We have our point marked. The hole needs to be about 1 inch. It doesn't have to be precise. It's really to just get that screw started. We're going to go ahead and drill this one. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to drill this one. Now, I'm not going to drill my last one. As I said before, sometimes the distances can be off. We're going to drill that last one so that it fits tight and our turnbuckle ends up in the right spot. So we'll get started putting in our eye bolts and we'll do that one last. Another thing is you'll notice there's 6 eye bolts. I've only used 4 in this configuration. Some configurations won't require all of them. Some will take all 6. It's up to you, and it's just to give you enough flexibility to do what works for your project. So I'm going to remove the tape. I have a nice clean hole there. And I'll just tap that in to get it started. And quite frankly, with an 1/8 inch hole, these will turn in hand tight. And they don't have to be much tighter than that. And I would like to turn them so that the head is vertical and the loop is on the top so that the cable can lay in behind there and doesn't pull out. We'll do the next one. Again, we're just going to tap this through. Just enough to get it started, and then we'll hand tighten these in. Now, if you're working on a harder material for some reason, it's a hardwood material or a harder surface, you might need to use a wrench or a screwdriver, in which case you kind of loop this through here and put it under tension, and you can do this with a wrench, okay? And again, we're going to have the loop open to the top so that as we lay our cable in there, it doesn't slide out. Hand tighten it in. Now, another thing you'll notice on this, as I'm tightening these in, is I selected my layout so that there's a structural board behind the fence. If I was to put an eye bolt in the middle, you can do that, but you need to know that the threads are longer than the board and it might poke through the back. So just take that into account. If you'd had to have one in the middle and there's nothing there, maybe you'd want to add a structural board behind it so that those threads have something to grab into. I'm going to leave that up to you. Depends on your layout and the type of fence you have. This is more of a general video showing you how to install the whole system. Okay, and again, I'm going to leave that last one till the very end so that I make sure we have it in the right spot and we can tighten it up correctly. Okay, now, if you'll notice, those eye bolts are a little bit further over. I'm addressing that because the most important part of this installation is the layout. And if you got to measure twice, cut once, as they say. And when I spaced this out, I was going a little fast and I was too far in. So when I laid this out the first time, the cable was just a little bit too long. So I moved them out. So it's not the end of the world on a fence like this, but if you're really precise and want it, really done nicely, make sure you measure twice, cut once, do your layout correctly, and then it should all come together fine. If you happen to make a mistake, you can fix it. Just move your bolts out. I just did that, and it's going to look fine. So we'll move on to installing the cable. So in this layout, the cable is going to start down here. I'm going to bring it up. There's a notch in the eye bolt. I'm going to slip it through behind, bring it across the top, slip it through there, and I'm going to end up right down here at the bottom. Now, this eye bolt will go right in here, except that if I had laid this out perfectly, well, if I had laid it out perfectly, it would be perfect, but I'm not perfect. So I always do this eye bolt last, and then I adjust where it goes. And if it's an inch different from there to here, you're really not going to be able to see it with plants and things growing around, and it's going to make it all lay out much better. So that's why I always say install the last bolt last. So that's going to go in right here. I've already drilled the hole. And I'm going to turn this so that the opening is away from the tension on this side. That will help it stay in place. And we're going to simply loop that through, and then we're going to tighten this turnbuckle. And you're going to tighten this not so that these are like piano strings or guitar strings and really tight. You just want them snug. Too tight and you'll pull the bolts out. Also, if you're installing this in hot weather, this cable will shrink in the cold weather, or vice versa. If you're installing this in cold weather, in the summertime, this cable will stretch out and start to droop. And so this turnbuckle then can be adjusted seasonally for that type of thing. Probably once you get your plant growing on this and you find the right tension, you might have to adjust it once in a while if it just starts to droop more than you like. And there we go. So, a very nice display and easy to attach plants to. We'll use our adjustable rubber ties to tie the roses right onto this at a 45-degree angle. And on this particular application, there's several different places you can put your plant, either in the center, or you could do one on each side and have them crisscross together. There's a video, and we'll link that in the description, of the perfect way to plant your climbing rose and how to train it. I'd recommend watching that, and the whole thing will come together quite nicely. For more information on growing roses and to find trellises and climbing roses for your garden, visit us at heirloomroses.com.